Hi, I'm Cindy Dixon, and this is my final project for theology. Sorry, I sound terrible. I've been sick for the past couple of days, but we're just gonna work with it. So the first part to this video is gonna be me talking about my past spiritual life and how it's been brought up through this class. So I was baptized on October 14th, 2001, which means, and my birthday is August 11th, 2001. So 2 months roughly after I was born, I was baptized. So I definitely grew up with a faith background, and I went to church every Sunday, according to my mom, since I don't remember everything back then. I began preschool at the same church that I was baptized at, and that church was where my grandma basically grew up in. So it's a church and school, and I continued going to church every single Sunday, and I would go to Sunday school after our early church services, which I hated going to, but my mom woke us up and got us into the groove of going to it. My whole family attended the church service, which I think made it easier for me to go as a young kid. And I'm sure I've seen kids nowadays, like, they sit in there and they're like playing with their toys and stuff, and I'm sure I did the same thing. So my whole family would go, me and my 2 brothers, my mom, my grandma, but my dad didn't go all the time. He only went on special occasions. No one really knew why. Well, at least I didn't, but I'm sure my mom knew. But we didn't know. And so then I went to my first vacation Bible school, and that was, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was the best time of my life. I loved every second of it, learning about God through the games and meeting these little kids, like the new kids. Like, it was just really great. That was also at the same church. I moved on to elementary school, attended the same school. I participated in like all things church related, so the school musicals, the plays. Definitely, we are in a musical, the story about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We put on a whole musical about that when I was in like 3rd grade, 4th grade, something like that. And I was in the choir, participated in all my religion classes. Probably could tell you every single story in the Bible at that point in my life. I got to 4th grade, and I decided I want to be more involved in the church's orchestra. Bad idea, because I wasn't ready for that. So I moved on to the handbell choir, so I was in the handbell choir for churches. When I hit 5th grade, I went to a summer camp called Camp Luther Haven, close to my home, and that also was a church-related thing, and I loved it. I went twice in a row because I loved it so much. I learned so much about God and my faith. I decided to be more of a leader in the church after I got confirmed, so I went to confirmation classes every Sunday with my dad, and ended up getting confirmed. And my confirmation verse was actually Ephesians chapter 5, verses 1 through 2. It was, be imitators of love as beloved children, and walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us. And since then, I've tried to like live by that, and I say it a lot, very often. But anyway, so then I became a teacher in Vacation Bible School and worked with all the little kids because I love little kids, and I loved seeing them grow their faith in ways they don't even know, playing little games and all of that. I eventually got to 7th grade, and my family decided to move. So then we went to a public school in middle school, and it was very different, and it was harder for me, and I didn't know how to grow up. I grew up with people who grew up in the faith, and then so moving on to people who didn't, it was very weird, and I didn't know if I could talk about my life, and I really didn't for a very long time, until I decided, you know what, like, this is God, this is why I'm here, like, God put me here to do this. And so I began to talk about it more, and I actually took a lot of my friends to church with me, and a few of them like continued to go like on their own, because I saw God's plan, and I think that's what he wanted me to do, and as of right now, I stand by that. I moved on to high school, same thing. I would try to go to church every Sunday, but volleyball really affected that because I had to have tournaments on Sundays, so I didn't really get a chance to go that often during that season. And I actually ended up talking to my pastor about that once, and he said that like I can show my faith through the way I play. And if that's the case, if I'm missing church and going to go play volleyball, then I should be showing it, exemplifying it greatly. And so when he told me that, I was like, okay, like I'm gonna try to do that. And so that's what I do now. At least I try. So then I committed to Walsh University to play volleyball. And obviously this is a Catholic institution. And I grew up in the Lutheran church, which is basically the same thing, but through this class I've learned a lot more things about the Catholic faith that I didn't know about, like Mary being this like a great saint, and that like you don't pray to her, you pray through her. I learned that, and I learned all these the forms of love, the different forms of prayer, which I'm sure exist in the Lutheran faith too, I just didn't know about. So you could say I definitely have a background in faith, not the Catholic faith, but in Lutheran. So now I'm going to talk about my faith now and the lessons and how they have affected me. So the first lesson I'm going to talk about is from week 2. It's about prayer and how to use it in the different kinds of prayer in the Catholic faith. So what really stood out to me in this one, I know it talked about spontaneous prayer, memorized prayer, but for me, the one that stood out the most was the ACTS acronym. I've talked about it a lot in my discussion posts, in my journals, and concept responses, so you know that it's important to me. But so the ACTS acronym stands for adoration, contrition, thanksgiving, and supplication. And I wasn't aware of this acronym at all. So, but now that I've seen it, I want to continue to use this in my prayer life because it seems very helpful when knowing what to say and like what order to say it in. Because sometimes it's hard to talk to the all-powerful God, and like not knowing what to say, it's tricky sometimes. So knowing these words is helpful. So I sometimes have trouble with the praising him and then thanksgiving. So what I found was from Psalms, pretty much any part of Psalms you can find some verse that's talking about praising him. But the one that stood out to me was for adoration, was, "O Lord, our Lord, how awesome is your name through all the earth." And that's from Psalms 8 verse 2. So that to me is like very helpful to know what to praise him for, because he's great and he has done everything for us and he's created this whole world that we live in. So praising him for that is a must. The next lesson I'm going to talk about is found in week 6. And this one is about mercy and justice. And I didn't really think about these words from a faith standpoint. I always just consider them as earthly words. And justice was somebody gets in trouble, they have a punishment. But in the faith, it's an organizational thing. So when someone sins against you, or you sin and you go to God for forgiveness, he has mercy on us. And that's how we are supposed to be. We are supposed to be merciful. We're supposed to live merciful lives. And we're supposed to give mercy to those who are asking for it. Even if they don't ask for it, you still have mercy on them, just like God does for us. So showing mercy really fixes the separation that we put between us and God when we sin. And probably us and the other person too, if that's the case. And it fixes the injustice that has been enacted. Through Dr. Greco's video from this week, he exemplifies this by telling the story of the prodigal son, where the son comes from a wealthy family, asks his father for his inheritance and leaves, wastes all of his money, then realizes that, oh, he could work for his father if he went back, but that takes a lot of pride and stuff. So, but he does, and he goes back, and the father looks at him once and is just like, "I'll take you back. I want you as my son, not a worker. You're my son, I love you. And he shows a significant amount of mercy on him, and that is how we are supposed to live our lives. So that part of that lesson just like really stood out to me, because I've never really thought about it that way, nor have I ever learned it that way. So I thought it's very important to live out your life in mercy, because if you don't, the whole world's going to go chaotic, like it says, disorganized. So I think it's very important to have mercy. So the last lesson I'm going to talk about comes from week 7, and I'm going to talk about both aspects of that one, which was sex and love, with the Bishop Barron, and then also about Mary being this great saint. So in Lutheran faith, Mary isn't this great big figure. She's just the mother who carried Jesus. But now I can see why in the Catholic faith she is the greatest saint of all, and why people not worship her but pray through her. Like Dr. Greco says in the video, you're not praying to the saints, they're praying through the saints, which I personally thought that they were praying to the saints because of all the murals and everything, and I really did think that that's what it was. Now I realize they're praying through them, because sometimes it's hard to talk to this God who is amazing, like created us, he's all powerful. So it's hard to relate to somebody like that, somebody like that. And it's easier to relate to people who lived on this earth, went through what we've gone through on this earth, and it's easier to relate to them, so it's easier to have better connection and talk to them, which is why Mary is such a big part of the Catholic faith. She is the queen of heaven and earth, because she is the mother of Jesus, who is perfect. And God, her sins were taken away from her when God decided that she was going to be the perfect vessel for Christ. She needed to be worthy to bear the Son of God. So she was everything she did was for him. So this is definitely seen in the story about the wedding feast and Jesus turning the water into wine. She definitely took charge and said, my son can help. And so she did what was best for him and what's best for everybody, and told him to help. So in Dr. Reckel's video, he says Mary existed as someone who took on a loving role for everyone on earth. She is a very big motherly figure, and she is also human. And another part he says that I took to heart was, she's a human who did it well. And that, I think, is why we have such a better connection with her. And just knowing that it's like talking to your mom, and then your mom talking to somebody else, it's just easier to do it that way. And not that you shouldn't pray to God too, but like going through Mary is just easier. And she's also the motherly figure for everyone. So the next part to this lesson is about sex and love and God, and how they all are kind of together. So I got most of my information from the video from the Bishop Barron, and he talked about how nowadays teens are hooking up so casually, and in return, because of this, they feel like these feelings of depression, not being good enough, or not feeling the satisfaction they should feel from taking part in sexual activities, because it's just casual to them. Like, it's nothing special, and they're not in love. They take love for granted, I feel like, and that's not good, and that's not what God wanted for us in the beginning. A quote that he says is that the principle of this could cause their deep alienation and their deep suffering. So I agree with this statement. I think that this is definitely a probable cause of a lot of teens' depressive thoughts and feelings, because it's hard growing up in this world, and like, it's hard not feeling the peer pressures to do all these things. But that's when you go to God, and that's when you remember what God tells us to do, and that we're supposed to be in love, we're supposed to be married. And I know sometimes that's just not in the cards, like it's really not, and that's okay, but we just need to know that sex is not a casual thing. It wasn't never meant to be. And in order to fix this problem, teens could refrain from that until they're in love or whatever they decide to do. I feel like this issue is kind of based on personal opinion and personal experience. I'm not someone who takes it for granted and is casual about it, so I really don't know that side of it, but I've seen my friends and people close to me go through these things, and I 100% agree with that statement. And I would like to show them like what I see in relation to God and this whole feeling of depression because of the casual things. So now I'm going to talk about what this course has taught me and what I'm going to carry with me throughout the rest of my life. I feel that the basis of vocation is very important, and I never really thought about it for myself personally until recently, because it's brought up in the first week of this course. So vocation, I want to be more involved in my church and more likely to, if somebody is struggling, I want to be more likely to talk about God and how he can help, whether I know if they're religious or not, because sometimes it's what you like, sometimes it's the little things that matter. So saying stuff like that will help. So my vocation, I want to talk about God more and not be too shy, because I am a shy person. So I want to be able to talk about him more often, and even when I'm uncomfortable about it. And then for my prayer, I'm bad about praying regularly. I sometimes fall asleep because I try to pray right before bed, but I usually fall asleep or I get distracted. And so following the Acts prayer will help me stay structured, stay organized, and stay on task, hopefully. And so I want to be able to use that and continue to use it, and not just use it for a week or two. I want to be able to continue to use that, and not all the time. Sometimes spontaneous prayer happens and you just go for it. But prayer is how you build your relationship with God, and I feel like during my time in college, prayer is going to be the most helpful way for me, and easiest, which sounds bad, but it is going to be the easiest way for me to do that, being a college athlete and working towards a goal in life. Like, I don't have the time sometimes, and that's terrible, and I need to set aside the time to do these things and pray and build my relationship with God. And finally, my last goal is to not worry so much about my future. I am definitely someone who gets insecure about what my life is going to be like in the future, and not focusing on the present, and not realizing that God has a plan for me, and he has the person I'm going to marry. Like, he has all this in store for me, and I just need to be patient. A lot of times, especially this year, for some reason, with guys or men that I want to pursue, I have been very discouraged and very angry about those things. And I think I can learn a lot from the book The Callings, and the same I don't really know how to say her name, Sor Philothea. She had no prospects for marriage, and she had no real money, but that didn't stop her from continuing her journey with God. She decided to continue her and spread the word of God to other people, no matter what. And she knew God had a plan for her, and that was her plan. That was her vocation. And I want to remember that, and I want to be able to, when I'm scared, when I'm worried about these things, I want to be able to go to God in prayer, in spontaneous prayer, and pray to him, and then I feel comfort, because I already do that sometimes. I just need to do that more often and think about that in my head, rather than freaking out and not remembering that God has control of my life. And this way I can be at peace with myself, and it's just a whole lot easier. Thank you so much for watching this.